So I want to talk real quick on recoil anticipation. This really messes with a lot of new shooters, and it's unfortunate that a lot of instructors out there don't talk to new shooters about this, so that way they can realize what they're doing and understand it, so that way they can fix it right away versus wasting tons of ammunition needlessly trying to address a problem that they aren't addressing correctly. So what is recoil anticipation? It's a natural reaction to the recoil of the gun. What it is you trying to fight the recoil. And it's a very common thing that even experienced shooters do sometimes. So recoil anticipation is not necessarily a bad thing, but what you have to do is you have to understand it and work with it and know what it is so that way you can shoot more accurately. Recoil anticipation, one of the chief things it causes is a muzzle dip. So if your muzzle dips, your rounds are going to sail low instead of on target, and depending on the distance, you may miss the target completely. If you're shooting at 7 yards, you can get away with a lot more than versus 50 yards. So what you want to do is just understand. When you understand what it is, you'll know how to anticipate the recoil in your mind, but not flinch because of it. You don't want to flinch from the recoil, and that's what recoil anticipation causes. So right here, before I get in any more talk, I have a SIG 320 and a High Point C9. Why do I have these guns? Because this is a 40 caliber, this is a 9mm. They both have kind of relatively high bore axis. And in fact, if you compare these two together, they're very similar. It's kind of funny how 320 and a High Point are close as far as bore axis. But the reason I did that is because some people like to buy into the gun has a high bore axis, so it's automatically going to be horrible for recoil. Well, it just depends on the design of the gun. The 320 isn't bad. Even though it has a high bore axis, the dang thing is fine for recoil. Even the 40 caliber compact that I have right here. So anyway, that's why I put those two on there, just for visual aids. But in any case, for anticipating recoil, basically what you're doing, and I'm going to try, and I've talked about this before, so you're looking down the sights, and as the gun recoils, you're going to see the front sight rise like this. Now, the perception down the rear makes the recoil seem larger than it actually is. People don't want to see this. So what they do is they tense up right before they break the shot, and it causes the muzzle to dip down. And they try to time it. And a good way to figure out if you're flinching because you're anticipating recoil is to have a buddy load some dummy rounds when, at some point during your range visit, but don't tell you which rounds in the magazine are dummies. Give it to you, load it up, and then start shooting. And guaranteed, if you're anticipating and flinching, or I should say flinching because you're anticipating the recoil, when you hit that dummy round, the barrel's going to drop. It's going to be a marked notice. You're going to notice it and go, holy crap. And that should be a wake-up call for you when that happens. Now, anticipating recoil can be a good thing when it's more of a mental. That's the way I look at it. I know that this thing is going to recoil on me. It's a 40 caliber. I definitely know it's going to recoil on me. But because I'm so used to shooting this, and the muzzle blast and all that stuff doesn't bother me, and I have good technique for hold, I know that even though in my visual I'm going to see that front sight coming up, I know that my technique's good, and the gun is going to automatically come back down right back on target. It's kind of a natural thing. I don't need to fight it because I already have good fundamentals. I know what the gun's going to do. That's kind of the mental recoil anticipation that you want. You know how the gun operates, you know what it's going to do, and you can work with it. You're not trying to fight the gun, you're working with the gun. It's really important because not everybody's created equal. And when we watch things on YouTube and Instagram, we'll see some of these guys out there, they're just running a gun and they're strong, they got excellent technique, and the gun just does not rise in their hands. It's just straightforward, there's no recoil at all, they're just buzzing right along. And that's great. But not everybody's created equal. I have really big arms. I know they're not the biggest, but I do have pretty decently sized arms. And I have a lot of experience shooting, so I can keep my handguns under control pretty good. Somebody who's newer, maybe, smaller statured, 110, 120 pounds soaking wet, smaller arms, weaker wrists, they might not be able to keep the gun as visually flat, but if they practice, it doesn't matter how much muzzle flip they experience, it's going to get back on target and they're still going to shoot rather fast. And you can look online, and you don't have to take my words for it. Just look online, and you can see a lot of different shooters just shooting, and you can see even smaller statured people. The gun might be looking like there's a lot of muzzle flip, but they're actually shooting pretty fast and accurate. The presence of muzzle flip or not isn't necessarily going to dictate how fast you can shoot. Of course, the goal is to be as flat as possible. That's the number one goal, but it's just not possible for everybody. Especially, depending on your choice. If you're shooting kind of a bigger 45, if you're shooting something a little more oomph, like a 10 millimeter, something like that, there's going to be a little bit more muzzle flip if you're a smaller statured person. Work with it, don't work against it. Because when you work against it, you're going to start flinching, you're going to start dipping that muzzle down, and what's going to happen is you're going to become frustrated and you're not going to want to continue to learn. Another thing too is picking the right tool. Instead of going 10 millimeter or something really high pressure, 357 SIG, one of those other Gucci calibers out there, maybe just go with a 9 millimeter. 9 millimeter is really soft recoiling and is a very, very effective round. So that's another option too. But I just wanted to really stress that anticipating recoil, the physical side, the flinching side, you need to train yourself out of that right off the bat as soon as possible. If you're training somebody else or if you're having somebody shoot, make sure to correct them and let them know, hey, this is what's going to happen. Some people might not be receptive to it at first, but what you need to do is just create that environment, give them some dummy rounds, and let them see for themselves what's happening. Then they can understand it, and then hopefully they can be receptive enough to just kind of fix the problem and work with the gun versus working against the gun. Another thing I want to add in on this, as far as the, under this recoil anticipation thing, if you're taking somebody out, I don't care if it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, family member, I really don't care. This is the number one pet peeve of mine. Leave the ego at home. If you're taking somebody out that's brand new to the world of firearms, you want to empower them, not make yourself try to look bigger and badder and make them look stupid. I hate the idea of taking somebody out for the first time. You hand them, even whatever, it could be a standard 9mm or 40 caliber. You don't give them any training. You just say, here, shoot this. They flinch at the recoil. They go, holy crap. And then you step in as the big, strong dude, girl, whatever, and then you just shoot tons of rounds downrange to make yourself feel better. That's wrong. That's wrong. Check your ego out the door. No one wants to see your ego at the range. Nobody cares. You're not impressing anybody. You're actually making yourself look a little bit like a jerk, honestly. So I had to add that in. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine, and I can't stand seeing it out at the range or even, in formal training events, like law enforcement training events and, military training events. It's just a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it. So with new shooters, let them know, hey, this is what you're going to perceive. They're going to perceive that front sight coming up. They're going to perceive it. They're going to want that front sight to stay down, so they're going to flinch and they're going to push that front sight down. But what's going to happen is the barrel's going to dip. You tell them that. You say, if you try and fight the recoil like that, you're going to have problems. You go with the recoil and you understand it. You make sure their grip is good, all their fundamentals are good. Let them work with the gun, not against the gun. So anyway, I hope this was kind of informative for you guys. I know it's just a lot of me yammering, but it's just something I see. Because one thing about recoil anticipation is it starts to affect trigger manipulation too. That's another quick point I'll go across before I stop the video. So along with dipping of the muzzle, what people tend to do, instead of this, which is a good trigger squeeze, they tend to do this. They tend to just get on the trigger. So not only are you dipping the muzzle, you're now losing positive trigger control. So keep that in mind. It's kind of a domino effect that can happen. just take your time with it, really explain it to people, let them know what's going to happen, and they'll understand it. So feel free to put your comments in the comments bar below, like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Thanks for all your support. I know my videos aren't really fancy, but you know, I still enjoy doing this stuff. So all right, thanks a lot for watching. Stay safe.